What's going on, everyone? Matthew and Jason here from the Driven by Details podcast, and we're just going to take a little bit of time to work on a video here and recap this crazy month of October.
Woo!
It's been absolutely insane, and Jason and I and a group of us actually kicked off October with a training at Chicago Auto Recon Training Institute, and Jason was in for a couple extra days after the training to work on the podcast. And Jason, you got a phone call from some specific person?
I did.
You want to tell us about
Unknowing.
that?
It was unknowing. You picked me up from the hotel.
Monday morning.
I get this random text. Hey, you're probably busy and not available for SEMA cars. And I said, who is this? And he goes, it's Jeremy from the Roadster Shop. And they're in Mundelein, which is not too far from where we were.
Right.
And I said, well, Jeremy, this is your lucky day. I'm in Chicago. He says, no way.
That's awesome.
He told John that too. He was like, great.
Yeah.
His main fabricator said, great, why don't you call Jason?
Yeah.
Jeremy's like, he's too busy.
Right.
And he texts me, and I said, who's this? And da-da-da. And he goes, well, the car's not here, but he's just down the road.
Sure.
His factory, where he makes his money, the owner of the car, is just 3 minutes away.
How crazy is that?
So he went and picked up the car the next day, which was
Tuesday the 4th.
10-4.
Yep.
10-4, good buddy.
10-4, good buddy.
We showed up at the Roadster Shop, introduced you again.
Yep.
And we looked at the car, and we said, yeah, we can do it.
So those of you guys watching, the Roadster Shop is 27 miles north of my little shop here in Itasca, and so conveniently the Roadster Shop's not that far, and it was just really a timing piece. And that's kind of what lit the fuse for the SEMA cars.
Yeah, so they had two cars, one car, but the other car was down at Avantgarde getting the upholster finished.
That's right.
So that was the unknown piece.
Sure.
We only had a few short days if everything was going together.
Right.
So we didn't know at that point. I flew into town.
Correct.
On last Thursday.
So yeah, we want to kind of just talk a little bit about what's transpired here in this video and kind of shoot some clips and some B-roll of really what took place over the last week, because it's day 8. Today is Friday, October 28th. Friday. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what time it is. It's just been a whole whirlwind. So going back a little bit more than a week, I had picked Jason up from the airport, right?
Yep.
We had lunch, and then we actually set up. We took, basically I broke down pretty much my shop and loaded it into the truck, and we relocated to the Roadster Shop for what we thought might be 5 days, because we kind of really didn't know.
We didn't know what condition the Chevelle was in. Avantgarde and Jeremy Carlson does a great job on keeping the cars as clean as possible. But
right.
We all know fabrication, plastics, woods, glues, all that sort of thing. They're not painters, so things happen.
Yeah, it takes time. Yeah.
So we weren't really sure what was going to transpire, if we were even going to get the car in time to clean it up.
Right.
Because we were waiting for the driver. The driver was there. Brian was his name?
I forget the driver's name. Not too sure.
And Saturday rolls around. We pull up the Roadster Shop, just past to get Starbucks.
Yep.
Because Killmer runs on coffee. And what was open coming out of the trailer
was the Chevelle.
Yeah,
he was early.
Yeah.
So, and I think, like, for you guys watching this, we were trying to plan a lot of things, and the planning was really, really challenging to actually nail down some specific things, because we really didn't know what time it was, right? Like, and how long these cars were going to take. We had seen the Grand National on Tuesday, October the 4th, and kind of had a idea in our head on how many
game plan,
labor hours that car was going to be. But without actually physically inspecting the Chevelle, you're kind of, I think in some instances, expecting the worst.
Yeah.
Right?
Worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario, sure. Instead of thinking it's going to be a breeze, because you just never know. You don't know what type of condition the car is going to come back, especially after the upholster has been around the vehicle. Of course, they're really doing interior focused stuff, but who's to say that there's other dust in the shop and you rub up on the car and you don't know what type of scratches you're going to deal with. So it was really hard for us to schedule everything, because post going to the Roadster Shop, there was a set and a block of 4 cars that needed to be done for the Ring Brothers.
The Ring Brothers. And what happened with that scenario is that got pushed up a whole week.
Right.
David Parson, our friend of Oberk Car Care,
Pushed back a whole week.
pushed back.
Yeah.
So no less, only a couple days to
Right.
do that.
Yeah.
He was supposed to start on the 15th.
17th. I think 17th of October.
Okay. So that got pushed forward. The Roadster Shop we were waiting for that. So things weren't looking good.
No, it was pretty grim.
Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah. So we busted through the Buick Grand National.
Yeah.
Got that dialed in.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. So the Buick Grand National that we worked on was what you like to call a cocktail.
Yeah.
You had mentioned as a cocktail in the way it was painted. So tell our viewers a little bit about that specific car.
I talked to the painter that painted it because he's a friend and he has some of my blocks. And he said he'd shot single stage and clear. There's 2 ways to do that. You can do single stage by itself. You can do cocktail, single stage and clear. And then, but they chose for whatever reason, I don't know why, to do single stage and then clear on top of that, which is fine.
It's crazy.
But they dry at different rates. They do different things. So I was expecting, some single stage to come off on the pads, and it didn't. Correct.
Yeah, just a little bit, maybe
a little bit,
overspray in spots, and
Yeah.
just a little bit of darkening on the pads. But
All in all, straight, right?
yeah,
The guys did for what they said a quickie.
Yeah.
It looked really good.
First of all, I just want to say, about Grand Nationals, I'm a huge fan of the GN because my first job at the dealership, my first boss, Bill Reese, he had a really, really cherry 86 Buick Grand National. I remember when I was a porter, he used to wash the car every Friday, and probably a couple months after working at the job, he gave me the keys and he's like, hey, before we wash it, let's take it for a ride. So it's one of the really first cars that was turbocharged that I got to take out on the road by myself with my boss. So it was like, they're special. And this Grand National was just, from edge to edge, the attention to detail is insane. I think having that blown out, 7-liter twin turbo V8 is unbelievable. And the coolest part for me was really that interior cluster. That interior cluster on this particular vehicle is like nothing I've ever seen in my life.
It's like Knight Rider.
It's like Knight Rider. And I remember going into the car to roll up the windows, and I had heard the guys from the Roadster Shop talking about the interior, cluster and the gauge and all this stuff, and I was kind of like, no big deal. And then when I turned the ignition on for the first time and all the lights went up, and I was like, I was kind of like starstruck in a way, like stopped, like what the heck is going on?
Boom,
awesome.
whoa, what is going on? And they built it all in house. We actually went to dinner with the guy who created the set.
Jake.
Yeah. Great guy from North Carolina.
From North Carolina. And he was saying that they actually started working, I believe, on the schematic for that right around the time the pandemic started. Yeah. So I think for me, even though I'm a car person and I've seen a lot of hot rod builds, and not as many as Jason has, it's just you don't really know the crazy amount of labor hours that these people are putting into these cars. Mm-hmm. And the planning that goes, right? Like it's months and months and months, which turns into years of planning before you actually have something that's functional.
Yeah. And hopefully it all works.
And hopefully it all works. Yeah.
And that's a lot of the custom stuff is trial and error.
Yeah.
Trial and error. We see that on a daily basis. With both shops that we were involved with, we heard a lot of horror stories that they were telling us. The trials and tribulations of building a one-off car.
Yeah.
It's not like they have OEM budgets with OEM vendors and everything at their disposal. They're working with, those two shops have a lot to work with.
Oh yeah.
But they're still not an OEM level. So they have something in mind that they're trying to portray, and then their vendors that make the parts and the pieces have something else that they're trying to portray.
Sure.
So sometimes that gets mixed up in translation.
Yeah. It's really interesting, and I think it makes the job, or I should say the time spent working on those cars, you're definitely kind of like, I don't want to say on your best behavior, but you're really kind of tiptoeing around the car and taking extra caution and extra care while working on these things, because this is years of planning. It's an over $1 million build.
Yeah.
So it was really the Grand National kind of, I feel lit the fuse for what was going to follow the whole week. Mentally, it wasn't as exhausting as I thought it was going to be, but it was still the first car.
Yeah.
It was still the first car.
More to go.
So we got the Grand National done, and after the Grand National was done, we spent pretty much all of Friday and the first half day on Saturday morning working on the Grand National, and then we picked up on, actually I was finishing up the fine details on the Grand National while you started kind of getting a scope of what the Chevelle was going to need.
Yeah, I started right into it.
And so that was Saturday after lunch.
Yeah.
Started on the Chevelle, and we worked into the early evening. I think maybe around the 6-7 o'clock hour.
I pretty much zipped around. I cycle cut that. I believe that whole Chevelle in about 1 or 2 clips.
Sure.
I didn't have that many hours in it. You know, Jonathan Goolsby painted, and the boys did a great job. But again, things get touched and things get,
Yeah.
they're assembling the car, so you want to be respectful of them. They're trying to be respectful of you. Like, oh, sorry, I scratched or I put a fingerprint on. No big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Everyone's just trying to get the job done, not step on anybody's toes, keep it lighthearted, have fun, joke around, but still get work done.
Yeah. Now, for everybody watching, I want to let everybody know, specifically with Chevelles, I'm not the biggest fan of a Chevelle. Not that I don't like them, but I feel like, I was thinking about this, I was telling Jason that in high school, a lot of my friends and all these car enthusiasts at the time had Chevelles. So it's like, this Chevelle, my friend John Murray had one, Nick had one, when there was like a group of guys that had these Chevelles, so you kind of get tired of them, and I think, at least I did when I was in high school, but this Chevelle, it's not your everyday Chevelle. The attention to detail on the Chevelle is really, really, really unique, and you guys will see some of the pictures here as I put them in the video, but the Chevelle was unbelievable. And that is going to be, the Chevelle was going to be in the BASF booth at SEMA show, and so there's going to be a lot of eyes on that car, and they're very proud of this build, as they should be, because it's unbelievable. But that car, the paint was really, really temperament. I mean, kind of on the softer level, where you look at it and it's kind of like, it wants to scratch. So, even with the machinings, it preferred the cycle cut.
Yeah, it definitely want to take our lunch money, and I wasn't going to allow that.
Yeah.
So I cycle cut it, and that's where we just work the compound or the polish until it's absolute transparency, if that's a word, transparency.
Yeah.
So you can pierce right through it into the clear, into the base, and then gingerly kind of scoop up the residue of the polish.
Yeah.
And not, bear down at any pressure at all.
Yeah.
To try to get the best crystal clear finish.
Sure.
And the guys were blown away. I mean, we were done compounding Grand National, and then Jeremy was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Didn't have any lights on it, just the ambient lights that were in the tuning room. And he said, holy, everybody came in. And then John, we didn't know it, he was spying on us through the window of the tuning room.
Yeah. There's such great people over there at the Roadster Shop, and I feel like it's working with industry professionals that are super passionate about their craft. I mean, it kind of builds that camaraderie and that team and that fellowship, and it's special, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really we're blessed for those guys. I mean, we're compared to them, we're nothing.
Right.
We're just taking out scratches. They're building cars from nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, I just made this Gauge Knight Rider cluster from nothing.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, you want me to take out that scratch?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
So it's an honor and a pleasure that these guys still entrust us to polish their cars. And it's really, honestly, truth be told, it's kind of insignificant. You kind of got to know your place. But they're very thankful.
Right.
Because that's out of their wheelhouse. They know it, and that's why they bring us in to try to help out.
Right.
Make the cars look as best as we possibly can
Yeah.
within the time frame.
Sure, yeah, because I feel like we even had this conversation with the guys at the Roadster Shop that these guys invest years of their time into the build, and I think when you kind of get closer to the finish line, mentally you're checked out. And if you're watching this video and you're a detailer, I think you guys can relate to that. You work on a car, if it's a correction and a coating, and in that home stretch where you kind of, the end is near, there's a mental part where you're kind of like, you start to almost kind of check out. And I think that that's where it's a breath of fresh air to bring in other technicians like ourselves to work on these vehicles, to really get them to the level that they need to be for the SEMA show.
Yeah.
The Grand National was unbelievable, and the Chevelle was super amazing, and I can't wait to see how these cars do at SEMA. And we appreciate you guys watching. We are going to do part 2 of this now, where we talk a little bit about the things that took place at the Ring Brothers.